Good evening, everyone. Happy June 9th. My name is David Lepofsky. I am the chair of the Special Education Advisory Committee for the Toronto District School Board, and I'm honored to be able to preside at our meeting tonight. I'd like to call the meeting to order and to take us through what I'm hoping will be a very helpful agenda for the benefit of anyone watching at home. The documents for this meeting that have been pre-circulated are posted on the website for the Toronto District School Board, whatever link is there for this Special Education Advisory Committee. So with that, I'm going to ask if our Vice Chair, Tracy, could lead us in a land acknowledgement, and those who are able, please rise.
Thank you. We acknowledge we reside on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, as well as the importance of establishing and maintaining cultural safety through learning from Indigenous peoples and perspectives. Thank you.
It sounds like somebody needs to go on. Thank you. Okay, we still have me echoing. It's bad enough to hear me once. Let me know if, nope. For the benefit of those at home, it sounds like a really bad science fiction movie. Are we good? Nope. All right, I'm sorry. Should we begin by a motion to approve the agenda? Lose it? Second. Let's give it a second. In favor? Okay. Next. Do we have any conflicts of interest that anyone needs to declare relative to tonight's agenda or any item on it? Richard, you do?
I won't describe it as a conflict of interest, David. I'm not sure how to describe it, but I would like to, when we get to any other business at the end, I want to talk about an article that came out in Toronto today, just around 5 o'clock tonight. Enrollment cut sparks concern over future of TDSB Hayden Park Secondary. And I want to disclose that my oldest daughter did attend that school in a special ed program. And so I want to declare that so there is no questions in my comments later. Thank you.
That's fair. We'll deal with other business. And I don't think for anyone here, just having had a child in the school creates a conflict of interest unless you're planning on getting a job there or something. Very good. Minutes of our last meeting. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of our May meeting, please? Jessica, a seconder. We have a seconder. Nora, all in favor? Opposed, if any? I'm just having some computer problems here for a moment, but while I'm sorting these out, we have two delegations and I'm proposing that we hear from them before we proceed to the chair's report. And in both cases, they are online, and in both cases, In respect for their privacy, we are just going to address them by their first name. And so I'm going to leave it to our first one. Our first delegate is Maureen. Maureen, are you, you're there and can you hear us?
Good evening. Yes, I'm here and I can hear you very well.
Great. You got 5 minutes. We look forward to hearing from you. And thank you for taking your time to bring your views to our attention.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Good evening, SEAC members and dedicated special education staff. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I come before you as a concerned advocate for children with special needs, and today I want to shed light on a troubling reality that many families and students are experiencing in our schools. We are witnessing a growing reliance on untrained or underqualified educational staff in classrooms, especially within TDSB. Due to a critical shortage of certified teachers and educational assistants, emergency replacement personnel, often individuals without formal education training, are being placed in classrooms, sometimes with no background in special education at all. For a child with autism, Down syndrome, or complex behavioral needs, this isn't just a staffing issue. It's a direct threat to their ability to learn, participate, and feel safe. These individuals often do not have the skills to implement IEPs, use communication tools, or de-escalate situations in ways that respect the child's dignity. As a result, we are seeing more classroom disruptions, more emotional stress, and fewer learning opportunities for the children who need support the most. But the problem doesn't stop there. Class sizes, grade 4 and up, have become unmanageable. Many classrooms are overcrowded, leading to sensory overload for children with special needs. The noise, movement, and unpredictability make it hard for them to focus or regulate their emotions. Teachers, no matter how caring, struggle to manage the chaos. With a high student-to-teacher ratio, it becomes nearly impossible to give each child the attention and guidance they deserve. Inclusion only works when the environment and staffing support it. Inclusion is not just about placing a child in a classroom, it's about making sure they can thrive in it. I want to highlight 3 things in particular tonight. First, there should be a requirement for all staff, permanent, supply, and emergency replacement personnel to receive mandatory basic training in supporting students with special needs. These children deserve to be supported by people who understand them. Secondly, nearly all major professions, medicine, law, finance, technology, ongoing education, and professional development are essential and often mandated. However, teaching remains one of the few critical fields where continuous upgrading of knowledge and skills is not uniformly mandated or required. This needs to change. Teachers shape every other profession, and they too must be supported and expected to evolve through regular, structured professional growth. Third, we must acknowledge that oversized classrooms are harming students and teachers alike. Addressing the classroom sizes and student-to-teacher ratio is essential if we are serious about providing quality, inclusive education. Every child deserves to feel understood, supported, and valued in their learning environment. Right now, too many are slipping through the cracks, not because they can't learn, but because we have failed to give them the tools and support to succeed. Let's not settle for band-aid solutions. Let's commit to building classrooms where every child, especially those with special needs, have chance to grow, learn, and shine. I respectfully urge this committee to make meaningful actions. Thank you very much.
I want to thank you very much for your thoughtful remarks. I know
Thank you.
you were reading from a text which has been transmitted to our extremely efficient staff liaison, Leanne Dixon, and I'm going to ask if we might by vote agree to receive the written remarks so they can form part of the minutes. Richard?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a comment on the delegation.
Actually, just let me deal with two things, Richard. We're just trying to receive, I'm trying to get a vote to receive her written remarks. All in favor?
Yeah.
Okay. And Richard, if you could hold comments till later, generally our procedure with delegations is they could each speak. We don't engage in question and dialogue, but it can, and given tonight's topics that are coming up in just a few minutes, will come out and they'll give you a chance to speak to it at that time, if
Fair
that's
enough.
okay.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Now for our second, let's hear from our second delegate, who is Yolana. Yolana, can you hear me? And are you ready to go?
Hello.
There you are. We could hear you now. So feel free to get to start when you're ready.
Yes, I'm ready. My name is Yelena Weiman, and I'm here today, honored to speak to you today about the TTSB failure to provide a safe JK placement for my nonverbal autistic daughter, Milana. I expected collaboration and a focus on her best interest. Instead, I experienced a shocking lack of professional conduct and responsibility. Milana exhibits dangerous behaviors, such as escaping, placing unedible stuff in her mouth, and throwing objects, just to name a few. With no supervision, she is putting herself, others, and untrained staff in danger. She lacks basic day-to-day skills and requiring support. When I attempted to inform the local school of her needs, I was met with hostility by the vice principal. Escalating this to the principal and HR led to dead ends. My voicemails to superintendent went unanswered. When I finally connected, I was informed that my request for an evaluation crucial to addressing Milana's needs was denied. I raised my concern stating that denying an evaluation and offering a placement in a regular classroom without support is dangerous and it's possible violations of her right to inappropriate education. The superintendent response was, "We are not denying her education, we are offering her a placement." This placement in our local school is unacceptable. Besides misconduct practices by the administration of this school, based on testimony of other parents, children who tend to escape, like my daughter, are locked in classrooms without outside time. This inhumane treatment is not an option for my daughter. Ignoring the need for an appropriate support and accommodations demonstrates the TDSB fundamental misunderstanding of inclusive education. Despite providing Milana psychological diagnosis, documented learning disabilities, and serious safety concerns flagged by her caregivers at OAP entry to school, the TDSB has repeatedly denied her an evaluation, stated she does not meet the criteria. I tried to contact those who denied her evaluation to engage in a productive dialogue, but my request was ignored. This demonstrates a total lack of cooperation and transparency. As a last resort, I requested a transfer to another school that could potentially better support her, but that request was blocked. This frustrating runaround for a simple school transfer feels absurd, mirroring every other interaction I've had with a school and a TDSB regarding securing a safe placement for my child. It feels as I'm trapped in a bureaucratic maze, desperately seeking a compassionate human connection amidst the system designed to obstruct rather than assist. This lack of consideration within the system adds to the already incredibly high stress levels that parents of autistic children live with every single day. This is exhausting, demoralizing, and frankly unacceptable. As a result, my daughter has been left behind and cannot attend public JK this September. These actions by the TDSB violate my daughter's fundamental rights as guaranteed by international law, which creates binding obligations to all Canadian institutions to uphold these rights. Right to education and parental choice, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 26. Rights to decisions made in her best interest and special care due to her disability, Convention on the Rights of a Child, Article 3 and 23. Rights to inclusive education with necessary accommodations and supports, Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, Article 24. Rights to have these rights protected, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 30. This isn't just about Milana, it's about repeated systemic violations of international law and lack of basic human decency within the DDSB. To solve this, we need to prioritize humanity over bureaucracy, implement mandatory evaluations before placement, with parental involvement, direct communication between parents and the board, simplified transfer for students needing specialized placements or escaping negative environments, comprehensive staff training focused on compassion for autistic children and their families. We must restore democratic processes and ensure that every child, regardless of their challenges, has the opportunity to learn and thrive in a safe and supportive environment. I urge you to take action, not just for my daughter, but for all special needs children who deserve an education that meets their needs and respect their rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, again, I believe we have a written text from you that Leanne has, and I'm going to ask if the committee will agree to receive that document so we could treat it as part of our proceedings. Yeah, but can we have a vote? Okay, very good. Thank you. I want to thank you for your heartfelt views and your recommendations for both of our delegations. It's not easy to talk about these things. It's not easy to talk about it when it's something close to home. The TDSB at this venue can't explain its response to these concerns, and our committee is not there to, as both of our presenters understand, to investigate and deal with these issues. What we do with what you've said is listen to your recommendations for what needs to be done for all children and for all students with disabilities or special education needs. And as we proceed to our discussion later in this meeting, a number of opportunities will come up where your ideas can help inform what we discuss. So please feel free to stay on the line, and thank you for taking part. The other thing I just want to say to everyone is SEAC welcomes delegations. People have stories to tell. Some of them are happy, some of them are wrenching, but it's important that we become a place where possible to hear and give people a place to be heard, so that we can help it enrich what we know from our own experiences and from those of our associations. So we're indebted. And if anyone over the summer is in contact with others who might want to make delegations, the ground rules, as always, are that we're not here to deal with individual cases. We ask that schools not be named, teachers and so on not be named, and that people talk about what reforms they think we can learn from. Let me proceed from there to briefly give my chair's report. Oh, sorry. Beth, can we, because we don't do discussion as a matter of procedure for delegations, is it something that when we get to staffing, I think all of this will fit in, and I'm wondering if you could just express thoughts that you have at that point.
I think it makes more sense to be honest to just express now that I and then we can maybe discuss it later. I just want to know how as SEAC we can ensure and help that, like help support people coming to delegate, just in terms of like, how are these things going to be followed up? And like when is there going to be follow-up? How are things going to be followed up? Like, it's one thing to hear, and yes, we always want to hear what people have to say, but there has to be a way as a SEAC that we can support these delegations. There has to be some process that we can help with in
Well-
terms of like what happens now.
Okay, Beth, let me put it to you this way, and I think this can be really constructive. Our role is to give the board advice where they need to improve things systemically. We do not investigate individual cases. We can't, we're not equipped to.
No, I don't need
No, I understand.
clarification
I understand.
on the role of SEAC. I don't need
but-
clarification. I know what the role of SEAC is.
Yeah,
But there has to be a way within our framework and within our processes to be able to support the next steps in this process in some way, whether that's communication or something. But I mean, as you said, to come and give a delegation at SEAC is a very big deal. And people are expressing extremely important views. And so I know what the role of SEAC is, but
No, I
there
I
has to be
understand.
something else we can do. So I don't need any more explanation, but I just would like to think about how we can, this can't be the end of
Okay, Beth.
what
let
SEAC
me-
does with these delegations. Thank you.
Okay, Beth, thank you. Well, let me best put it to you this way. Sorry, we're getting that feedback. Let's just see if we can. Okay, now we're clear. Folks, because we have a lot on the agenda, I want to be able to get to it, and I want to also provide a way for these to be infused into our discussions. So for example, last month, we had a delegation that made a very important presentation. Once I get through my chair's report, this committee asked to have it on the agenda, that's where it is. Similarly, for both of these delegations, an issue to which they both relate is the recurring point that SEAC has been pressing, and I'm about to address in the chair's report, which is the TDSB system for enabling parents who are frustrated with how things are going and try to raise concerns isn't adequately serving all parents who need it. And we're going to, and again, when I dive into and believe me, that's a topic I intend for us to come back to. But I want to just make sure, because I want to get everybody through our busy agenda and home at a good time. I'm going to ask your indulgence to let me proceed to my chair's report. And that's not to diminish at all these concerns, but rather to try to make sure that we deal with them as best we can in the sequence that we best can. If I could just talk to you about my chair's report, and I'm going to be brief. I've made a written report. I will ask for it to be received, but I do want to update you in a couple of fronts. The first is that the special education review that is underway and that we have two representatives on has given rise to some very serious concerns about how they're doing their investigation. And they were documented, they've been raised and discussed when we had this on our agenda a few weeks ago. But as well, Nora and Latoya who are our representatives, the only ones we're allowed to have on the special education review, have put a bunch of them in writing. And I included them in my report to you, because I think it's not good enough to just for us to, or for TDSB to just go ahead with the review as it is. Last week, when I appeared before the Finance and Budget Committee, the staff asked the trustees asked senior staff, what's going to be done to make sure, if we're told that there are no cuts in staffing, that services don't drop. And we were told they're going to be tracking it through the special education review and the survey to be done there. Well, we've identified some serious concerns with that review. So I think we've got major cause for concern that there is going to be undue reliance on a flawed process. What we do about that next, I think, will be a matter of first having Latoya and Nora go through the rest of the process and come back to us in the fall and see if the concerns are resolved, or if we need to come forward with some concrete recommendations and bring them forward. But I wanted to at least alert you to that. The second thing I wanted to alert you to is a motion was passed here at our last meeting. I presented it last week to the Finance, Budget, and Enrollment Committee, FBEC. I've circulated the brief, which I wrote very quickly, and I have also sent you a link where you can see, watch the actual discussion. In the end, there are a couple of things I want to share about it. Number one, there was a unanimous, I believe, sense among the trustees who spoke that when the board did a survey of parents about possible cuts to special education, that or probably to the budget, cuts to the budget, that special education should not have been included. And individual trustees apologized on the record, and several of them, even though the chair said it was not in order, supported a motion calling on the trustees as a whole to apologize to parents about this. This part is very helpful. Part of it was unhelpful. We were told essentially that this was out of order for this committee. That's what the staff of governance at the board told them. They didn't tell me. I asked which committee to go to. This is where I was sent. Governance should not be sending SEAC to a committee to present its concerns to if that committee is the wrong one. The other thing was, this is really weird, and I've got to tell you, it's really weird. It was basically shared with me shared through the discussion, I should say, that you could watch on the video, that the trustees cannot really pass a motion asking staff or the director of education to apologize. Now, I don't want to I don't want to beat this thing to death, but the thing is this, it wasn't the trustees who designed the survey. It's sort of weird when those kinds of things are considered operational, i.e. the trustees shouldn't really be involved or can do some consulting on it. And the chair of the finance committee said he was partially responsible for not catching this. But on the other hand, they've got to do the apologizing. There's just something weird about the way this works. With respect to the issue of cuts, the staff, when we in our motion asked for a policy to be established that there will be no cuts to services, that also was ruled out of order. I don't know why it's the finance committee can't decide that. They're the ones deciding on the finance, or at least recommending to the board what to do. But with respect to the issue, but the trustees did press staff, and staff were thorough in their responses on the fact that there are no cuts to staff. And we'll have a chance to talk about that in just a couple of minutes when I wrap up. But the final part of the motion, which was the one thing that was in order, was that this should be, an apology should be, or the fact that there will be, the fact that there'll be no cuts to service to to staff, special education staff, should be communicated to parents. The committee could rule on it, and all they did was refer it back to staff. We haven't heard from staff if they're going to actually communicate that with parents. Remember, the board communicated with parents that this could be cut in that survey. And so it seems to make sense that they should communicate that it won't be. Those are the key points that I have to offer you at this point, with one final item, and that is the SEAC staff working group on the staff action plan. We've had several meetings. I think all of us who were there would say they were collegial, and we covered a lot. However, it seems at this point that staff, at least unless I'm advised otherwise, felt it was concluded. At least a couple of us who are on the SEAC members side felt it would be useful to have at least another meeting or two, that there's still more to discuss. So I would ask the committee, remember I last got your authority to carry on with the committee from April through June. And I would like authority, if staff is willing, to carry on from now until September. I certainly expect we would be done by then. If staff are unwilling or don't feel it's necessary, I shouldn't say unwilling, if staff don't feel it's necessary, that's their decision, and I'll report back to you. But as far as we are, there are still issues that we felt were supposed to be open to discussion, and there is room for discussion, and we'd like that chance. So if I can, I'm happy to take questions on any of this, but I wouldn't mind if we could just have a vote mandating that SEAC remain engaged in the working group on the staff action plan over the summer.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll bring the motion because I think of it as just purely procedural. I don't think we need a seconder. All in favor?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. Sorry, did we have a vote?
We did.
Okay, good. All right, with this, let us next turn to, and this is where please be ready to jump in with everything that's been sort of on your minds from our last meeting and through these delegations, staffing levels. So this is a chance, what I'd like to do, we've allocated a good chunk of time for this. And I'm going to ask, we want to ask staff first to just give us their response on a couple of issues. And then I want to open it up to everyone to ask any follow-up questions you want. The questions really boil down to two things that I'm thinking of up front, and Nandy and I have talked about this, and Louise in advance. The first is, we've had an announcement that there will be no cuts to the number of staff for special education, even if there are enrollment reductions, which is a great thing to hear. There is, however, to be an increase in the size of some intensive support program or special education classes. And it sounds through that some students may experience cuts to their service. In other words, if they were in a class and succeeding this year with a complement of 10 students, they might end up with probably a complement of 8 students. Next year, they might have 10. And I know Nandy and Louise gave detailed answers to the Finance Committee, and I think it's important for them to have an opportunity to give a full answer here and for you to be able to ask your questions. And related to that, I've suggested to them that a lot of the anxiety that some parents might hear when these caps are raising is they just think of their own child, understandably, in a class where they've been with a certain number of students, and they hear there's going to be more students, and they're worried that it's going to happen to them. And so I've said to the staff, it would be helpful to get a concrete sense, not just sort of in a text in a special education plan, but what's happening on the front line? Like, what should we expect to see? So that's the first part. And the second part that would be helpful for staff to speak to, and everybody asked me to do this. We had the delegation last month. It talked about the lower staffing ratios that the province allows for certain intensive support classes with high needs and multiple disabilities. And the suggestion was made in that delegation, the TDSB is doing that. I don't know the answer. We heard what they had to say. In fairness, wanted to have staff have an opportunity to respond, to let us know, and then to afford to you an opportunity to ask questions and discuss what we do with this. So with that, Nandy, take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So David, just to be clear, you'd like me to comment on the DK class size going from class size cap of 8 to 10.
Plus the other ones that were, last month you told us that some of them would be growing.
Yeah, so, okay, thanks.
So and you had indicated they were being raised. They will correspond with provincial caps, but they will be higher than what was the case this past year. So there's that. So if you could talk about that and how this is going to play out on the front lines. And then if you could also talk about the staff response to the delegation we heard last month, that would be great.
Thanks. I'll speak to the staffing piece. I don't have anything prepared in response to the delegation from last month, but if there are specific questions about the delegation from last month, I'm happy to do my best to answer those. So with regards to the the class size changes that we shared last month with SEAC, there were two, and one was the diagnostic kindergarten class, ISB, going from 8 to up to 10 students, as well as the MID junior going from 14 to 16 up to 16 students. And the primary MID as well as the intermediate MID are already at ministry class size caps. So we would be doing that to align with those ones. With regards to the class size caps for any of our ISPs, I'm going to say that even though we have a class size cap of a maximum, many of our ISPs do not actually go to that maximum depending on the needs of the students, the individual students, as well as groups of students within the classes. So we may have 6 MID classes, some may have 16 students, some may have 12 students, some may have 13 students, depending on the needs of students. So that would be the first piece there. So it would be similar for the DK that we're proposing going from 8 to 10 as well, that depending on the needs, they could go up to 10. We see this as actually increasing access to the program for students that we see that are coming in with needs so that they're able to access the diagnostic kindergarten program faster and avoid a wait list of waiting for a class, which we all know that in every district, there are students waiting for an ISP. While we have no cuts to staffing, we do need to remember that we have a moral, ethical, and legal obligation to provide special education supports to all students in the board that require it, not only the students in ISPs, but students whose parents have a right to and have chosen the regular class. So you were correct in your statement around we haven't cut staffing district-wide. Each year, we do engage in a staffing review where we look at all the needs across the entire district, and we have to allocate staff based on needs for all students, whether they're in a regular program or they're in an ISP. So those would be the two changes that were being proposed to the junior MID as well as to the diagnostic kindergarten class. With regards to what that looks like on the ground, as was your question, we have very highly committed and caring and compassionate staff who are committed to working with central staff to support students. And we are continuing to offer very robust training and supports for staff, whether it's modeling in the classrooms for them, whether it's bringing in supports from central teams as well. And where needed, we do provide additional staffing. So we do have ISBs in the district where, even though it's 2 adults to 10 students, there are some that have 3 adults or more for 10 students, depending on the need again. So we do, again, respond based on needs of every individual class or individual student.
Okay, well, with that, let me open it up to whoever wishes to either ask questions or offer your thoughts. Can we do a speakers list?
We have 6 people right now.
Okay, so let's do, can we do 2 to 3 minutes each?
So it's Eliza first.
Okay, Eliza.
Isabella.
Oh, Isabella.
Sorry.
It's okay. Our names are similar. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Nandi, for this overview. And but I can't help but notice that TDSB decided to I don't know if the TDSB ever has even consulted SEAC. I looked through the notes and I couldn't find a motion that would recommend that multiple exceptionalities be phased out. And the reason why I'm saying this is because classrooms with students with multiple exceptionalities should not exceed 6 students. And for many, many years, the congregated sites, this is exactly how they were designated. And the ratios of teachers to students was 1 to 6. So this started to be phased out. I was able to track it to around 2016. When the board started to report that we're in the process of phasing it out. And indeed, our schools are called now the developmental disabilities, which do have a very different cup size on that. And that is, what is it, 10?
Mm-hmm.
10 students. So that's a 4 student difference. And for those specific schools, and I should also add to this, because I'm actually right now looking at the at the Provincial Educational Act and at the regulation that actually identifies the ratio. And it says that in that group of multiple exceptionalities, students who are aphasic and also are autistic, they belong to that same group that shouldn't exceed 6. I should emphasize that in congregated schools, many of the students are in fact aphasic and have a diagnosis of autism. And as much as I think what's on the special education plan, how it is phrased now, that the TDSB tries to address every single exceptionality the best it can, I think that sounds great, but in practice, that designation by the Ministry of Education outlines that this is a special population that in fact you cannot extricate the different exceptionalities that they have.
Okay,
And-
I'm just going to have you
No.
wrap up. We got your question.
Sure.
It's a very good question. You put it very
I
effectively.
would like to, maybe this is something David or any other of the SEAC members, was there actually a motion here?
No,
that-
there was not, in the past, not to my knowledge. You mean,
Okay, so I would like to request that perhaps there be a motion that TDSB actually follows the Ministry of Education regulation and identifies students who have multiple exceptionalities
Okay.
as multiple exceptionalities, because
Let me just, I want to make sure everyone else gets to speak and Andy gets a chance to
Sure.
answer it. And let's get the full discussion going and the staff response on it, and we can decide where to go.
well,
Good points.
the only reason why I said that is because 6 students is the cap on that.
Yep.
And so
Good.
anything above that, which in our schools, we are losing 2 teachers.
Yep. Got it. All right. Nandy, can you help us out?
Thank you. I can say that we are in compliance with ministry and ministry requirements as well as regulation, as well as the regulation or the Education Act. So I'll park that and leave that there. We do have ASD ISPs where the class size cap is 6. So we're in compliance with the ministry requirements as well as the regulation. With regards to the classes in congregated sites, I think we need to be very cognizant that when we speak about the ratio, we're talking about student and teacher ratio. And we have very, very valued and valuable support staff that are many, many in those classrooms as well. And so in any one of our ISBs and congregated site, we have 5, 4 adults at the same time, which is comprised of teachers as well as support staff. So the students are very, very well supported in the classrooms, and we are doing our duty and what we must do to support all the students across the district in the regular setting as well as ISPs. And we do that through the support staff as well as our teaching staff.
Okay, great. Tracy's just going to read out the speakers list so everybody knows the sequence, and then let's carry on. Thank you.
So who I have now is Leo, Latoya, Richard, Nora, and Bronwyn, and Diane.
Okay, Leo, so can we try to keep it to 2 minutes just so we are sure we can get through everybody?
Yep. Thanks, David. I think it's really relevant that we're discussing the larger class size issue. And even just today, we had this delegation from the parent about harms of increased class sizes. So that sort of guides my statement here. We have long advocated for individualized student-centered education in Autism Ontario, and we support initiatives to reduce wait lists. But I would like to challenge the logic behind this particular trade-off, which is a decision to increase class size caps in special education programs in order to free up teachers and therefore create more classrooms. But at face value, that may appear efficient, and that's what staff told trustees in the committee meetings that I watched. But it actually reveals a deeper contradiction, because while we're told that this is to expand access, we're simultaneously watching the quiet disappearance of deeply effective programs like those at Hayden Park Secondary School, as reported by Toronto Today just 3 hours ago. Hayden Park has, for over 100 years, served disabled girls, including autistic and multiply exceptional students. They have a very strong MID program with dignity, care, and individualized support. It's a trauma-informed, disability-affirming space where students thrive because their identities aren't just accommodated, they're understood. And yet this fall, new enrollment is canceled. The incoming grade 9 class is gone, redirected, and dispersed. TDSB is saying that it's due to low demand, but I'm going to ask, is it due to low demand, or is it low visibility and diminishing systemic commitment? After all, it's the IPRC and the board who directs students there anyway. And what message does this send? We are closing down small, specialized, high-support ISP classes and then raising the caps in the remaining ones. That's not great growth, that's dilution. Our position is clear: class sizes must remain small because students need more and not less. Inclusion is not putting more autistic and disabled students into larger rooms with fewer supports and calling that progress, and it's not shuttering programs that have proven their worth to generations of families. I just want to address the framing of this closure as a planning decision and therefore outside SEAC's purview. That framing is incorrect. Any decision that removes an ISP option for students with disabilities is by definition a special education issue and within our purviews. Departmental labels cannot be used to sidestep accountability, and also it's just a word issue if you're claiming that it's not a congregated school. The fact is that it is known as a special education place. I asked the committee and TDSB, I'm wrapping. Yep. Can we honestly say that increasing class sizes while closing schools is expanding access, or are we just spreading resources thinner with less effectiveness? Because from where I sit, as advocates, as parents, as community members, the logic doesn't hold, and the cost is being paid by vulnerable students. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Leo, would it be fair to say that's an idea you're sharing with the group? You're not looking for a specific answer?
Yeah, I don't need an answer.
Okay, that's great. And just so everybody knows, when I interrupt you and say time's up, I hate doing this. You've all got important points, and I don't, believe me, I wish we had time for me not to have to do this. Next speaker is LaToya.
I'll keep it short, but definitely interrupt me. I get it. It's a tough job. So I guess it's a question and doesn't need an answer today. And can also be a little bit of a food for thought, given especially the delegations that we heard today. And I guess I'm also going, my question here is probably going to be similar to what's already been said here, but have we considered the additional training that staff may need? I know sometimes we make the assumption that just being a teacher alone is going to be enough or sufficient training, but with this change, there may be an additional training with staff, I guess, getting dispersed amongst more school, having more kids in their class than what they're used to, with I guess a variety of needs. So it's just getting them on board with a lot of this and getting them to the place where they can actually support those students. Have that been considered? And also, have we heard from staff their honest feedback and how they feel about the change as well? And what are we doing with some of the information that they have provided, whether it is negative or positive?
Nandy, do you want to speak to that?
Sure, thank you. I think anytime you look to make changes to programs and services in order to support all the students with needs in the district, all 40,000 of them with the staff that we do have, you're going to have, concerns raised. Our job as a department is to support school-based staff, and that's done, as I said, through central teams, through working directly with the students, through working directly with the staff and supporting them that way. I know as a teacher that taught students with special education needs and disabilities, as well as what we refer to in TDSB as ISBs, my own learning and my own engagement in professional learning enabled me to better support the students that I was teaching, regardless of how many there were, because I was learning UDL, I was learning universal design for learning strategies, differentiated instruction strategies, and I was able to apply that to all the students. So we will continue, we always do, but we will continue to focus supports on the classes that are going to be experiencing the change. And as I said, we have classes at ministry class size caps currently, and we support them as well. And that's what we would continue to do for any of our classes, whether it's in the regular program or in the ISBs.
Great, thank you. Richard.
Thank you, David. Okay, a couple comments. I'd like to speak to first the comments of the delegation earlier. I want to note that there is the regular class placement, there's ISP placement, but there's a whole middle ground that we're missing. Oftentimes, we talk about these two settings, but not what's in between. And I know from my own experience with my daughter, there was some peer buddying in 7 and 8 that made the world a difference. So it's not necessarily an ISP, it's not necessarily a regular class. We got to find that middle ground. I like what Nandy had said in her comments and direction regarding supporting children in the regular class with special education needs, staffing review. And I think it would be helpful for staff, trustees, and SEAC to know for all the ISPs what the enrollments are, projected enrollments, what the staffing levels are, and where is that wiggle room in those programs. But to Leo's point in bringing up the enrollment cut spark concern over future of TDSB's Hayden Park Secondary School, the article came out today. I would like everybody to have a look at it because I want to note the wording in there. It says, in quotes, due to limited enrollment. And I note the quotes around the statement, for which I believe we need to look into at a much deeper level, because is it limited enrollment because nobody knew about the program? Nobody was offered the program? What grades are we talking? Are we talking about the special education program, the regular classroom at that school? Because it's a mixed high school in terms of its program. How was it marketed? And what were placements offered to students at Hayden Park and their families turned them down? Hayden Park, with its 100-year history and small size and focus on a very unique student population with a wide variety of learning interests and needs, has demonstrated over and over its success. And I refer simply back to, I think it was a 2010 article in the Toronto Star, which I welcome you all to read to understand what that school is about. And further to my disclosure earlier, I wish to share with you that my daughter, whose psychological assessment identified her with mild to moderate developmental disability, that was her label. But at Hayden Park, she was in an MID course, an MID program there for her approximate 7 years. And following earning her certificate of achievement at school, she went on to the CIC program at Humber College. She had opportunities while at Hayden Park to develop skills in workplace volunteering, including volunteering at the Center for Social Innovation. Then she had a placement at Fidelity Investments on Bay Street, followed by paid employment at Elections Canada, Elections Ontario, the One of a Kind Spring Show, Cirque du Soleil, Jay's Care 50/50. I ask you, has she been successful? Was this school going to Hayden Park a foundation for her success? Obviously. And to deny other young adolescent women and students the opportunity to make these same achievements and have the same opportunities, I think, again, we got to look back at what does the limited enrollment mean and what was that about? Because I'm at a loss to understand what this is about. And I would say it limits the ability of our students. It's not a limitation on enrollment. It's a limitation now on our students by following this route. And lastly, what I wanted to comment on, when I was speaking to the interviewer for this article, I suggested the writer asked the board not only the rationale behind this decision, but their thinking, because I think rationale and thinking are in two completely different places on this decision. And you look at the success of other students at this school and what they've been able to achieve. To take this away, and I say take this away because I have heard of no other option that's being offered that's better than this. So I'd invite the board to, at our next SEAC, to let us know what Hayden Park is being replaced by for those students in the MID classes and the other classes, and how this will give them further opportunities and greater experience and greater benefit. Because at this point, rationale and thinking are completely separate. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to take it that that's an observation that you want us to take into account, not a specific question. And
well, the specific question, David, is if they're closing down Hayden Park, and
where are the kids going?
What is it being replaced by?
All right, Nandy, do you want to speak to that, or would you like to get back to us on that?
I could speak to it now and
Sure.
certainly bring
Okay.
someone to speak to Hayden Park. So please know that any student that needs an ISB gets an ISB. And that is what's happening. So if there were students that were needing an MID ISB at Hayden Park, they would get an MID ISB at a school. We are obligated to provide the special education placement, and that is what we do. And we provide that closest to the student's home with space. We are we have provided the MID ISBs, Richard, for the students who require and need that, although they may not be at Hayden Park if there aren't enough students for, I can only speak to the ISBs. In terms of what's happening with the regular enrollment, I can't speak to that. I don't deal with the regular enrollment of the school. However, as I said, students who require an ISB will get access to an ISB.
Hey,
David, if I may just add,
sorry, go ahead.
it's not about the ISP. It's not about making sure that the student gets that placement. It's the environment that Hayden Park has provided. And if people can't see what that school is about, we're really missing something here. Instead of just saying, okay, ISP, here's your ISP. That's one element. That's I guess the Ministry of Education, the legal requirement. But what about that experience and the opportunity? And that, I believe, will be completely lost unless you can replace it with something even better than Hayden Park. And what I've read, I know of nothing else in the TDSP. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Nandy, and thank you, Richard. Beth wanted to be added to the speakers list. Beth, you're on. I'm going to do Nora, then Bronwyn, then Diane, and then Beth, and then we're going to move to our next topic. And we will see where we go with this topic in the fall. We're not done, believe me. This is a step. Nora?
Thank you. It's my understanding that not only have we increased the class size, but we've also increased the class number. Is that correct? Like there's more classes now too for MID. So it's a question before I speak. So have we increased not only how many kids are in a class, but how many classes there are?
Thanks, Nora. So every day IPRCs are being completed and we have more students that are requiring and needing an ISP. The numbers are changing consistently. What I can share is that I had shared last week, that as an example, we're opening 11 DD ISPs. This week it's 18. And so
The benefit of the people watching, that's developmental disability special education class, just to define the term. Go ahead, sorry to interrupt.
Thank you, Nanny. I just wanted to clarify that before I spoke. So my association, Diane and I are here about an association that represents inclusive education in a way. And I know we all believe in our children's rights and we all believe and want our children to have everything that they need. And I know staff want that too. I fundamentally believe the people who sit here and talk to us want what's best for all the kids. I believe that. I think my frustration and our frustration is it's resource problems and in an attempt to sort of try and stretch what you have to meet as many people as you can, you end up coming here to say things that we feel don't adequately meet the kids' needs, quite clearly. I feel from my perspective as a person who is hoping for a world where inclusion does not mean separate spaces, in a place where schools do have spaces for all the kids. And I truly mean all the kids. And I appreciate Hayden Park has a unique environment, but I truly worry about, as I've read, like Nowhere to Turn, the Ombudsman's report on what happens to people with intellectual disabilities in adulthood. I worry when the rest of us are not prepared to be with people who have significant needs. So I'm not a fan of congregated sites, and I respect all my colleagues who are here and fight for them because I know they have lived experiences I have not had yet. But I do know I want a world where people aren't shocked to find that there are people who live like this and families who need us around them. I'm really advocating for ONSIS data every year because I feel like as our association, and Diane and I have had many conversations about not wanting to offend our colleagues on the committee, but feeling like the TDSB is losing ground on supporting children in the regular class. And I feel what's happening is because resources are short, families show up, staff make statements because they have to, not because they want to be cruel. And it starts a chain reaction of panic on the part of families. And people feel like ISPs are a refuge from the chaos of what's going on in regular class. I want to support my colleagues here, and I think Diane feels the same way about wanting to support everybody, but every child obviously deserves to have what they need. But we have a serious problem about addressing and changing regular class instruction, because when I looked at the data, we're talking 15% of kids in elementary MID in the regular class, that's it. Like less than 5% for DD. Very, very, very low numbers of children that staff can see in their local communities. And I'm telling you, when families want to go shopping, that person that's a half an hour drive away, that family is not watching your kid when you have to go get groceries. That family is not helping them get to school or go to the library or be part of a community. So when you take an ISP, I agree there are things you will get, but do not forget you are sacrificing also. And so I will not step on the toes of families that want to make those decisions because that's not my place. But regular class is a problem. Making sure everybody, the delegates today are talking about lack of training. And I know you have fought so valiantly to try and get us that, and you are getting movement. And I know that's from your diligent efforts. But senior leadership, the director, the trustees need to know that special education is mandatory for everybody. And if you have to fight so hard to convince somebody of that, they are not listening to our families or our committee.
Thank you very much, Nora. That's very heartfelt and respectful. What you're addressing issues on which we have common ground and people have different approaches, but doing it in a really important and respectful way, and that really matters. Bronwyn.
Thank you. I just wanted to address concerns with Nandy and Louise, just because I did attend the program in school. Sorry, my son's having a meltdown. Sorry. Anyways, he has his hearing aids out. Just beware. Anyways, the big problem with us is that I don't feel comfortable that how modified came up as a solution to help teachers with the extra support that they're getting within the school. I don't remember specifically if it was Nandy or Louise, but there were some concerns from trustees challenging what was happening and what were the solutions for teachers to handle this large class size increase. And they said for children that can't self-regulate, then they would be having modified days as an option. And that's very concerning. And also from a modified day, I want to know the details myself, written down on the process of what families have to go through to get a modified day. Because what I'm hearing and what I know from others who have been on this, it's the pressure. They aren't they don't go and say, oh, I know what modified days are. I'm going to go to the principal and I'm going to go to the teacher and advocate for my child for a modified day for my child. What happens is that they go constantly and they're pressured and pressured and pressured to be forced into modified days. And it's not just because of their speech therapy appointments. It's not because of their occupational appointments. It's not because of all the excuses that I did hear that were brought up that were medical appointments. It is not because parents choose those things. It's because often they are pressured. So I would really like to have clarification with it. And I really feel it was it's breaking the right for education for kids who should have full day. And it gets us back to the soft exclusion and everything tied with it. So please address that.
Nandy, I think because we've got exclusions coming up in about 5 minutes, I'm going to suggest let's hold that, but we're going to cover it.
David, can I just answer it now
Sure, if
because
you'd
it's
like to now,
separate
you
from
can. Sure, go ahead.
exclusions? Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for the comments, Bronwyn. I think when that comment was made at board committee, it was made around other ways that the trustee had specifically asked about other ways that students are supported. And the response back to the trustee clarified that these are specific to students who have the need for a modified day recorded on their IEP as an accommodation that they're legally entitled to. So I just wanted to clarify the clarification that was offered that evening. Let me just finish, please. Maybe my next comments will capture or provide some more answers. Additionally, we have worked really, really hard, and I implemented this, and I'll share this, that when I implemented a mechanism for tracking modified days and for holding school-based staff, principals, and superintendents accountable for placing a student on a modified day, we were one of the first, if not the first districts to do that. It's not required by the minister to do that. So we take that really, really seriously. And I've outlined here very clearly in previous meetings the steps for a student being placed on a modified day, which does not exclude families or the superintendent or the special education and inclusion department or other departments. That must be followed. So it's not just a principal that can say, I'm putting a student on a modified day. There's a very, very clear process with lots of accountability measures in place for that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So I wanted to clarify. I'm sorry, when I say principal, I'm fully aware that it's not just the principal picking up the phone and doing it. It's the same with families, and Nora can relate to this for families. She's advocate. It's for the families that are pressured into doing ISPs and being pushed out of mainstream with those massive meetings that are overwhelming. These meetings are very intense to the point where they feel modified is the only answer. So I do understand sorry, just so you know, I'm clear. I know this is a massive meeting. It has everyone under the sun that's overwhelming parents and scaring them to the point where they feel this is their only option. So I thank you for clarifying, but I still have really big concerns with that.
Thank you. Steve, I know you're going to want to speak, and if you can, after the last three, if you could do it like in a minute or so, I'd be really happy. If you can't, do your best. Diane.
Hi there. Yeah, I hesitated whether to talk or not because Nora did say a lot of the things I wanted to say, but I really felt as an advocate for the Inclusion Action Ontario that I did need to talk for a couple of reasons. One, I do understand, and I know a lot of my colleagues support ISPs and congregating sites for many reasons. I was one of those people when my son was going to school. There's lots of reasons, and I believe they are for people who need them, and I don't say anything bad that way. However, my big concern is when the numbers are shifting, and I think Nora got to this point about supporting everyone. That's my concern. My concern is there's over 65% of the people in special education who either are not identified, which means generally that either they don't qualify for an exceptionality, they don't get a report, many different reasons, but many of them probably could be in an exclusive and probably are in an inclusive classroom, as well as a lot of population learning disabilities, as many others. It's a large population. And yes, it's great to support everyone, but my question is that allocation moving, that we're going to move it to more special education classes? How is that going to impact the inclusive classrooms? I know you've talked about it a little bit through training, so maybe just expand on it more, but I just want to make sure, sometimes we talk about the voice of people who don't have disabilities cannot speak. But there's a voice of invisible disabilities of students. And I think we don't always think about that. They don't speak because of many reasons. And I think somebody needs to keep them in mind all the time. And I don't want to lose sight of everyone. So that's my piece about this whole thing. I just want to make sure we're whatever budgets, whatever the thing is, that we're looking at everyone. And to Richard's point, if we had a better sense of how that's going to impact, that would make me feel comfortable. Thank you.
Thank you. Beth.
Hi. So many things I want to comment on, which obviously I'm not gonna do in this, in what I'll add now. Firstly, Nora and Diane, I think what you're saying is a little bit concerning to me. Maybe perhaps I don't totally understand, so maybe we can have a conversation later. ISP classes are extremely important. My daughter has tier 3 needs, and she absolutely needs an ISP, and it's not the job of educating the general public about how to interact with people with disabilities is not something that is my daughter's responsibility. So that's the first thing. Perhaps I have it wrong, what you're trying to communicate. Second thing is that my daughter was a grade 9 placed in Hayden Park School and has now been redirected. So I just wanted to speak firsthand to how much of a problem that has caused for our family. The rug has been pulled out from under us. I can tell you that the process right now is that we're just being, bopped around to different MID programs, none of which have fit, one of which we were told had a wait list. And so as it stands right now, it is June 9th, and my daughter does not have a class for grade 9 for September. So if anybody would like information on how that was communicated or whatever, we can speak offline, but I can tell you there are so many significant problems with the way that the TDSB is handling things right now, and with special education in the TDSB. And it's frankly, I feel embarrassed that this is the board that my daughter is in. And yeah, that's all for now.
Beth, thank you. And I think a conversation with you and Nora and Diana after would be a really constructive idea that I think will benefit you, benefit you both. And reach out to me at any time also, of course. Steve, and then we're wrapping up.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, just a very quick comment about this whole thing. Inclusion was a strategy that was introduced to the TDSB probably close to 10 years ago. I think it's a great idea. The problem that I see is there doesn't seem to be a very detailed plan of implementation for this. It doesn't take into account the example before us, closing Hayden Park School. Okay, well, what are you going to do? That should be determined months, years ahead of time. It doesn't take into account the changing demographics of the population, which are somewhat predictable. It doesn't take into account the number of staff required, or the number of staff aging out, or the number of people even available on the planet to become teachers and EAs and SNAs. The idea was great. This is what we're going to do. But there has been no evidence of a very specific, detailed organizational transition to say that teachers should be dealing with these kids, not EAs. Lovely thing to say. But then where is the training? Where are the EAs needed in transition of this time? The plan seems to be missing. The idea is great. The plan is not. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I just want to wrap up with a quick observation and request of staff, because staff have been able to hear the concerns expressed and the range of views. But there's a pervading, now what do we do? And I want to suggest a concrete question. It would help us if in our September meeting, if staff could come back to us with that. The first is, well, actually 3 parts. One is a fuller answer to Richard's question about Hayden, because this is garnering attention. Second, Nandy, you'd indicated you weren't in a position to give kind of a fuller answer, and you did what you could with respect to the delegation from last month. I'm wondering if we could get that in September. And but third is this, with respect to the whole issue that everyone's talking about now, about no cuts to staff, but they're being moved around, and caps to some special education classes are being raised. Here's what I hear. I hear, number one, they're not cutting number of staff, special education staff, and that's great. Number two, some staff are going to move out of out of special education classes to work in the regular classroom to support students with special education needs. And that's great. Number three, some staff are going to move out of existing will be reallocated, some special education staff, presumably moving them out of some existing intensive support classes, so they could open new intensive support classes, because there's an inflow of people who want to get into them. And that's great. The problem is, does it add up? Each of those pieces is good. It doesn't just sound good, it is good. We can move more supports into the regular classroom, apropos of what Diane and Nora were talking about. That's good. It opens up more capacity there where we need it. If we don't have enough intensive support classes to support all the students who need it, opening more, that can address that. But is the effect of it that we're going to end up with a whole bunch of these where we've spread it so thin that students net or some are going to be worse off? Now, in fairness to Nandy and the staff, and I always want to be fair to Nandy and the staff, you can't know that now because they're still planning the numbers. But in September, these classes will have been set up. Staff will have been assigned to where they're going to work. It would be very good for us to know then whether it worked. And if it did, I think we would all say, you know, that's great. But if it didn't, I think we'd want to then say, hey, it sounded like the goals were good and the pieces were good, but it doesn't add up. And at that point, it would be for us as a Special Education Advisory Committee to go to the board and the staff and say, need to rethink how this happened so it doesn't happen next year. So my request of staff, if we can in September, is to get kind of a snapshot of how it landed in this reallocation of staff. And if it worked. We will then hear from parents because staff may say it did, and it may look like it did, and parents may say, yes, it did, or some may say, no, it didn't, and others will say, hey, it's better than ever before. But I think that that's the logical next place for us to go. With that, I want to thank everybody. This is not an easy subject. Isabella, we're actually 15 minutes into the next agenda item. So if it's okay.
I want to say one thing, and I just want to say one thing. We might be also underestimating how the class ratios also have to do with safety of the students. And if there are some students, like for example, if there's fire, and you have students who have exceptional needs and cannot deal in panic situations, there's going to be a problem. And I say that because as a parent from Sunnyview actually had a fire department come in and do an evaluation of the safety of evacuating students.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I am actually planning
Sure.
for safety to be on the agenda in September.
That sounds good, but we have an obligation to these parents too. That's why I'm raising this. This was a parent who raised that as a concern, and the number of staff was kept at that.
Right.
Right, so it is an issue. Do we have fire marshals actually coming in to evaluate and see that our students with special education needs will be able to safely evacuate our schools? If not, we have to ask the province for more money. That's what it comes down to. And I think that SEAC, all of us are here, will advocate and will support you in that. That's all.
Thanks very much. And I will tell you, it was my intention to do just that with the provincial investigator who was sent in to look at the TDSB's books. And I said at the last meeting of this committee in May that I would be asking to be put in touch with them. I asked TDSB to put me in touch with them, and they didn't. And they said, it's confidential. I don't get that. In fact, I think it was a disservice to us and to the children that we're worried about and advocating for that I didn't get that opportunity. Because believe me, you know what I would have been telling them about the need for funding increase. Let us turn to our other major issue. We're going to have less time, and maybe we need less time. Let me bring you all up to speed. This is the issue of what are called, for the benefit of those who are new to this, exclusions of students from school or refusals to admit. This is not a situation where a student is disciplined for misconduct, suspended, or expelled. This is not a situation where a parent voluntarily says, my child can't come to school. This is a situation where the family wants the child to come to school, but the principal directs that the child stay at home, whether for a part of a day, all of the day, multiple days, or longer. In this committee, just to bring everyone up to speed who may be new to this, Thanks to the advocacy of this committee, some years ago, we have a stronger policy for oversight of this on the books at TDSB than at a number of other boards, at least last time I checked some time ago. But there is a real question of whether it is effectively being enforced. If principals follow it, that's great, but if they don't, what do we do about it? And we are now at the point where we have in January placed 4 reform ideas before staff. We have asked for feedback on them. In March, Jim Spiropoulos came, we understood, to answer them, and then said he can't speak to them. I've asked staff to, and we're going to now. I'm going to first briefly review what they are so everybody knows what we're talking about. Because we're here to give our advice, and these are things we have informally advised. If they get implemented, great. If they don't, we decide whether we want to make either a motion or do something about it. But first, it would be helpful to get staff's response. Let me just go through what they are. And last month, you'll recall, we had the executive director for the Arch Disability Law Center describing them in a very positive, these ideas as a positive step, if implemented, to implement the human rights obligation to students with disabilities that the board has. So the first thing, this is not in order of importance, is that the board tell in a public statement, do it through, in plain language, parents that their child has the right to be in school. Because some parents know that, some parents may not. Or some parents may think, well, that's fine, but they can tell me no any day. The board should be telling them that. They can do it in plain language on the website, in TDSB Connect, in one of the many documents they send home, but just telling them that. Number 2, offering a phone number to call if they've tried to get it resolved and they haven't. Now, the staff have said that they would like to rely on the formal protocol of the concerned parents protocol, go to the teacher, go to the principal, go to the superintendent. The board can make this number available saying, if you've tried all those things and it didn't work, please call here. We've been asked by staff to relate if we know of a case where this has happened, and special education staff can intervene. And special education staff, I believe, are really dedicated to want to fix this problem. But we, the Special Education Advisory Committee members, shouldn't be the conduit when they could set up a simple phone number. And so that was recommendation number 2. Recommendation number 3 is that the board should establish a distinctive, unique attendance code that only applies to a child away from school when they've been told they can't be in school. And we've sometimes heard the term soft exclusion. I don't care if it's soft, hard, mushy, diluted, or whatever. They've been told they can't be there. Now, we've been told there is a code. Provincially, the code is G, and it covers a whole bunch of things. If you punch up everybody who's away on a G, it doesn't tell you how many are away on a refusal to admit. We've been told the board has its own one. It would be helpful to know what it is. We've asked, we haven't been told. It would be helpful now to know. And finally, the other solution, Nandy mentioned earlier and has briefed us at earlier meetings about an excellent thing they do. They want to keep close tabs on how many students are on a modified school day. So a survey, a form is sent to every principal. They have to fill out every month. How many students in your school are on a modified school day? So we're not waiting for them to maybe report. They've got to answer, and they've got to answer accurately. That's great. That's a real positive step. As far back as January, we've been saying, why not add to that form a second line? How many students have been away this month on a refusal to admit of any kind? It doesn't cost anything to add another line. It's not a financial burden on the board, but it is an accountability measure. So those are the four ideas we've put out. We discussed them in January. March, we discussed them again, asked Jim Spropoulos to deal with it. Last month, we discussed it with two guest visitors with expertise in the area. Now, what I wanted to do is give staff an opportunity to give us any response they wish, and then we can discuss what we want to do. So Nandy, if I can kick it over to you, if you want to handle it, that would be great.
Thank you. So with regards to the unique attendance code for exclusions, refusal to admit, David, you're correct in that the province suggests a G code, and our procedure for refusal to admit currently does say simply a G code. We've put a number to that, just so that I'm clear with everybody. We're given a certain number of codes. Each school district's given us a certain number of codes, so we can't just, create endless number of codes. However, we have created a code of G570, which is used for exclusions, or which will be used for exclusions, refusal to admit. In line with that, we are also looking at reviewing the procedure that we currently have in place for refusal to admit. And of course, SEAC was consulted on the initial procedure when it was created. And we'll be doing that again. And Jim Spropoulos will be holding the pen on that, but it's truly a collaborative venture with Jim, myself, and Shameen, who is the system lead for mental health. I'll just skip to the fourth one because it had to do with a code as well. So in terms of modified days, we do have two codes. For students who are on a modified day for ABA or IBI, we use code 590. And for any other reason, we use code 560 for students on a modified day. With regards to the fourth area that was identified, in terms of adding a question to the modified day form that is completed by principals monthly, how many students were told by the school to stay home. Unless principals have followed TDSB's formal processes for placing a student on a modified day or formally on an exclusion or / refusal to admit, principals are not to be sending students home. So we will not be adding another line to say, did you send a student home because they're not toilet trained, as an example, or because you were short-staffed, because they're not to be doing that. And that has been, and quote unquote, informal or soft suspension. So, outside of special education, because all formal processes or practices or procedures must be followed. With regards to the unique phone number, TDSB will continue to use the parent concern protocol as the mechanism for parents to bring forward their concerns, as the principal and superintendent have direct responsibilities for the school-based staff, and they can direct the school-based staff on the actions to be taken to support the students in collaboration with other central departments, including special education and inclusion. And we continue to engage in ongoing training and communication or messaging to principals and superintendents around TDSB's expectations for students attending school. The TDSB's website has statements that are already set out in the district's multi-year strategic plan, as well as the special education plan. And while it may not be the exact wording that is being sought, it does capture the sentiment and the as expressed in the statement. So we are using language consistent with the multi-year strategic plan. And I think that those are the 4 areas, and I've addressed
Yep.
them all there. Thank
They
you.
are, thank you. I want to open it up to discussion for a couple of minutes because we're about to run out of time. The last important discussion went longer. But I do want to say that if we would want to be very involved in the consultation, not only a formal one, having, you know, Jim and you and the third individual come here and circulating the text, but also informally, because we've had a thorough back and really positive back and forth that led to the original document. But can we just take a 30 seconds speakers list?
So we have Leo, Nora, and Latoya so far.
Okay, we're gonna cap it at you 3. I could really save time by saying, why don't you all talk at the same time? Go! Okay, Leo.
30 seconds is cruel, David, but I'll try. We had an example of an exclusion today, our second delegation whose daughter will be out of school in September. So, and it's interesting because just earlier today, staff said, and I quote, "Every child that needs an ISP will get one." How can staff say that while our second delegation today spoke about how she's being denied access to an ISP via SEPRC rejection, thus leading to her daughter's exclusion? I understand that SEPRC has specific criteria for complexity, but I also understand that every non-speaking autistic child, level 3, is by medical definition under the DSM-5 very complex. That is a medical fact. It is not subjective to board interpretation. I speak to a lot of parents at Autism Ontario, and over the last couple of months, we have seen a concerning increase of cases of parents with very complex kids being rejected SEPRCs. I would even risk saying it's close to 80% of recent cases. This is a clear pattern we are seeing at Autism Ontario, and I wonder if SEPRCs are being systematically rejected at the end of the school year due to ISPs already being full. If not, then what is going on? Within this trend we are seeing, one of the data points is today's parent delegate who told us her daughter is now excluded because she can't thrive in a regular setting and an ISP was not provided. Yes, it's true, SEPRCs are not a ministry legal obligation, but rejecting timely assessment for kids with very complex needs and not giving them an appropriate placement creates exclusion and a human rights violation, forcing a child home while waiting months for an IPRC. So my 2 questions. Are SEPRCs being systematically rejected at the end of the school year due to ISPs being full? And number 2, why are level 3 non-speaking autistic kids being rejected SEPRCs when they are defined as medically complex by doctors? Thank you.
Leo, yeah, you're raising a really important point. Because time is short and because this is on that we're talking about exclusions at this point, I'm going to ask if you wouldn't mind transmitting your request through Leanne by email so staff can follow up. And then if you want to raise it at a future meeting.
I definitely can, David, but I just want to reiterate that it is an exclusion matter because when you reject a SEPRC, you force the child to stay home sometimes for 6 months, which is the case of our delegation from this morning.
Okay.
Oh, not
Fair
this morning.
point, and I didn't get it, and that's my fault. Latoya.
Right, so I really want to commend the staff for moving forward with a way for parents to be able to communicate that their child is not at school and it's not for reasons of their fault. It's really just down to refusing, whether it's soft refusal or not. Just some things to keep in mind that so for some of the parents I've spoken to, one of the challenge is that principals sometimes choose not to register children in school. So within that first few months, which is probably along the lines of some things that Leo brought up as well, then those kids are basically not getting the phone calls. The parents aren't getting those phone calls because that child is technically not in school. So it's like, as we move forward with this, how do we make sure that we capture those data of those students? And looking at that as also part of the refusal. And sometimes what principals do, whether it is that they're doing it with the intention to cause harm, is really just whether or not there is an intention, there is an impact. And what they'll do is they'll just get the parents, they'll say, this is what we can't do. So can you just send us an email, just saying that your child is not going to be here for these days. And that's it. So it's like, parents without the knowledge, they may not always know how to be able to navigate that and do send that email so that it becomes something where it's like, oh, the child is away for this period, but because the parents requested that. And also just thought thought of how we
Latoya,
communicate
I'm
this
gonna have
with
you just wrap
parents
up
as well.
If you could.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just gonna, this is the last one, how we communicate that this is an option for parents as well, how to use this new system and also to be able to communicate that information that their child is being refused. Just keeping in mind how we disseminate that information.
Okay, thank you. And Nora?
Thank you. I think I was mostly interested in how we're informing parents about these are the only ways you can be absent. Right? Because I think there's lots of families out there that don't know that. And so how we're on the site, so we've asked for like a number people can call when this kinds of things happening. How are we empowering parents with the information so that they can bring that to the table? Because I think many of us at the table have had experiences where we've gone in with families, they've gone in by themselves and been told things, and then they show up with somebody who knows more and things start to change a little bit because somebody who knows more showed up. So how do we make sure families know it? Because if we're saying we know staff aren't supposed to be doing it, and so we're not going to create a code because we don't want to reinforce the idea that staff can do it, then we're going to need families to be empowered with knowledge so that they can hold staff accountable and know to use your other process. So is that going to be put on the board's website that it says, these are the only ways a kid can be absent?
Okay, let me wrap up. We're going to go to the leadership report. And let me tell you what I'm going to suggest we do. I welcome over the summer to receive your emails with what you think might be our next steps on this issue. I want to indicate that a step forward would be a consultation on whatever they're reviewing to come up with that's new. But we are facing the problem that the fellow who wrote the original and good policy, now retired Ted Libera, came before this committee in a really good consultation process. And he said, hey, it's good that we're dealing with this, but he said, we're still relying on the principals to report. So the problem we have here is the ones who don't. And it's no answer to me that you don't ask them because we don't want them doing it. That's just not an answer. If that was the case, you'd say, well, don't report modified days either. We'd love the kids to all be in school the full time. But it is going on. The center says they don't know how often it's really going on. They want more people reporting. This is a way to get the information. That's my concern number one. My concern number two, the information about the attendance code is extremely helpful and I appreciate it. The other problem is this, not sending parents a statement, your child has the right to be in school, because go read the special education plan. Somebody who just came here from a country where they're a refugee from a war or a horrible environment, and they've settled here, and they come from a place where you don't challenge government because it's dangerous. They don't know from reading multi-year strategic plans, and they don't know from reading hundreds of pages or more than 100 pages of special education plan and decoding it from that, the simple statement, your child has the right to be in school. What really conveys that to the full population of this school board would be a statement from the school board saying, guess what? Your child has the right to go to school. I would hope we don't have to bring a motion to the trustees to get that statement made. I welcome your feedback over the summer. And finally, with respect to the Concerned Parents Protocol, if you look at my chair's report, I got an extremely helpful memo from Leo, who took his volunteer time to do a little research on it. Turns out it's not the straitjacket that the ministry's not imposing a straitjacket. There is a lot of flexibility. The ministry did not say principal and then superintendent, and that's all. You can't do anything else. If anything, they talk about a need for flexibility. here's the case where we need that flexibility. I welcome your ideas over the summer. And then we can decide this fall if we go any further, and if so, what it'll be. For the rest of our business, we've got the leadership report with some good news in it. Nidhi, take it away again.
Thanks, Leanne. I'll do this really quickly in the interest of time. So as always, we've put in the June learning sessions for staff and families. I believe they're mostly for staff, given that it's the last the last month of the school year. We did have last week or the week before 2 sessions on how to support children with ADHD at home, and we had 357, I believe, families, parents that showed up. We've also published our June newsletter for families, and a suggestion was made to add a subscribe to our newsletter button to the site, and we've to the website, and we've been able to do that. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the newsletter. Next slide, please, Leanne. This was a webinar on ADHD that I spoke about on May 28th and 29th, and well attended. And next year we're planning on offering ADHD Part 2 for families, focusing on additional strategies, as well as having a high school focus for students with ADHD in high school. The session was recorded and has been posted on the public website under the parent engagement section of the site. Next slide, please. The ministry is once again funding school districts to offer summer transition programs for students with special education needs and disabilities. And so these are students who may require some transition supports. Students can work alongside school-based staff. In August is when typically we see schools doing this, and students are welcome to go into the school, meet the teachers, establish some relationships, practice some routines in order to prepare them for a smoother transition to school in September. Next slide, please. And we have a professional activity or professional learning day coming up, and we always take advantage of those days to offer professional learning for support staff, which are SNAs, EAs, in our schools. So we will be offering, or we have offered on June 6th, that was last PA day, a number of sessions on how to support students in the classroom. They're hands-on sessions where the support staff are able to create different visual supports, for example, and learn some strategies on how to support the students that they work with. Next slide, please. And on May 29th, we had a Be the Change Project Showcase. This was a grant that we applied for through the ministry, and different schools participated and came together to share what they were doing in their schools to promote inclusion, integration, positive interactions of students and ISPs with similar aged peers in regular programming. And really, it was very exciting because the students themselves were the ones that were leading and taking on leadership role in addressing or promoting anti-ableism within their schools. Next slide, please. And we had another pilot project called the Friendship Community. And again, this is through occupational therapy, physiotherapy services, again, through a grant that we applied for through the ministry. And it was an 8-session module that was created and delivered to students at 4 pilot schools from grades 1 to 6. And again, it's about affirming neurodiversity, relationship building, and allyship, and dismantling or promoting anti-ableism, rather. Next slide, please. We also held some events, a number of them, which I won't go through all of them, at in-person fairs as well, supporting transitions to high school and beyond. This one in particular is about supporting transition to high school for secondary congregated sites. where students were able to come in, meet the staff, and connect with other professional support services such as social work services, psychology services, occupational therapy, physiotherapy services, and speech language pathology services, as well as child and youth services, and staff from the Special Education and Inclusion Department. Next slide, please. So through professional support services, which is our team that consists of social workers as well as child and youth workers, there was a healthy relationships and anti-sex trafficking initiatives. And these were sessions that were offered in partnership with some of our partners, Montage Support Services, Victim Services of Toronto, at 8 of our congregated sites. And it was part of an initiative called TEAR, which is Teens Ending Abusive Relationships, and particularly to support students with developmental disabilities and mild intellectual disabilities, focused on fostering healthy relationships and raising awareness about the risks and realities of sex trafficking as well. Next slide, please. And we also held on May 3rd a Developmental Disabilities Virtual Connect Fair, where this event was held again in collaboration with community partners. And there were virtual sessions, one in the morning and the evening, and key community agencies were providing supports on funding recreation transition to adulthood, long-term future planning for children and youth with developmental disabilities. Next slide, please. And this was one of the in-person fairs that I did attend, was very, very well attended on May 3rd at John Poliani Collegiate Institute, and over 300 families attended, and we had over 50 agency partners that came to offer information on supports for transitioning out of high school for students. Next slide, please. And June is National Deaf-Blind Awareness Month, and we have put this information in staff communication as well as in our parent newsletter, and it's here again for SEAC and the public. And that's it for the leadership report. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for putting up the link for people to, just for anybody watching, if you want to get the TDSB Special Education newsletter, go to their homepage, tdsb.on.ca, go to the special education link, and there is a button or control for doing that, and I appreciate that being done. Quick question for me, and if there's any other questions, just we'll take a speakers list. You'd mentioned the transition to high school program. Does that take place, is that available before someone has an IPRC and is going to end up in that high school, or do they have to first get the placement there? In other words, can they use that program to look at the different high schools, special education high schools, to see if they're a good fit?
Sorry, David, can you ask that one more time? I
Sure,
missed
no,
that.
totally understood. I'm just wondering, you mentioned that transition to high school program for people who are going to visit a congregated special education high school and get oriented to it. I'm just wondering, is that only available for students who've already been placed in that high school, or is it available for ones who might want to explore whether it would be an appropriate placement to seek?
Oh, thank you. It's for students who have actually been placed in a specific school, because the idea is to go and meet the new staff and meet new classmates and the like. And so it's meant to be a supportive transition. So that was that in-person event that was held prior to the summer. We also have the summer transition program, which again, that's for integrated as well as congregated sites, schools as long as they have staff who are interested in doing those days, students can come in to transition, work alongside staff to see the classroom, learn some routines, participate in some activities and the like.
Okay, great. Any questions? Nora.
I just wanted to thank staff for making sure that there was education about human trafficking to people with intellectual disabilities, considering they're at increased risk of being vulnerable to that. And I just ask again, you know what I'm going to say about kids and making sure that people, the whole system's aware of the fact they're at increased risk and that those kids need that education as well. The ones that aren't in congregated sites or ISPs also need to be prepared as they're moving out and about in the world.
Thank you, Nora. And we do through social work services, they do the same training for students in integrated sites as well that who are not in ISBs. We do targeted sessions for students, especially in high school with MID or DD, because the research does show, for example, students with MID in relationships tend to be in more abusive relationships. So I'm sharing targeted pieces, but please know that social work services are also doing work in schools with all students. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Just one quick
Jessica.
question. Does that mean they would know if there was an integrated student with MID, they'd know to take particular time with that student?
So I would have to look at the session that they offer, but I'm sure they talk about nuances and different groups of students.
Okay, Jessica.
Thank you. I'll make it brief. In the leadership reports, we get statistics about the number of IPRCs that are reported, and I'm new here, so I don't know if I've just missed something. But do staff ever report to SEAC on the number of special education appeal board decisions launched by families that are unhappy with their IPRC decisions?
Thanks. Great question. And it is actually a requirement to be in the special education plan. So each year's special education plan reports on the number of IPRC appeals.
All right. Thank you very much. We have an other business, as I recall. Was that Richard or?
It has been addressed already, David.
Oh, it has been. Okay. Trustee or association reports before we wrap up. One?
Yeah, Steve.
Oh, Steve, are you a trustee or are you an association?
Association representing Epilepsy Toronto. One quick question I'd like to ask of staff is for an update on the PPM that involves specifically students with how to treat students with epilepsy. Just 1 second, sorry. Yes, the supporting students with prevalent medical conditions. If we could get an update for September on supporting the specific details of how to deal with seizures, because I don't believe the current plan actually has a section for students with epilepsy. It talks about it generally, but there is not a specific detailed plan about what to do or an administrative procedure broken down into that document.
Okay,
That's all.
my suggestion is either as a first step, if you could just fire a note to Leanne so see if we can get this dealt with over the summer or in the early months of the fall without needing you to wait for a SEAC meeting for it to be raised. And also, we're going to be aiming to cover safety, so that's also a fantastic place to add that into the discussion. That's a very important point. Isabella.
I just wanted to say that the Ministry of Education actually prepared special documents for how to deal with students who have epilepsy. It's part of the broader memo that they sent a number of years ago about students with prevalent medical conditions. So actually there is a copy of that and you can just easily, share it. So, but can I just ask, because I raised this question about multiple exceptionalities, and it is, I think it has bigger implications than we think. And since it is a ministry mandated exceptionality, Obviously, we don't have time for it today. Can we table this until September meeting and have a discussion about this? Because
Yeah. no,
we
it-
haven't been consulted on this. And I do think that there's much to be said about bringing back multiple exceptionalities as one of the designations here at TDSB. And this way, TDSB can also ask for more money and supports from the ministry.
Okay, consider it part of the follow-up that
Thank you.
I'm hoping we'll do on the overall staffing discussion, part of it. And it needs to be part of it, and we with you. Listen, I want to thank everybody. This is the end of the school year. For our volunteers on this committee, all of their dedication, their time, their passion, and their patience, especially with the limited time we have to deal with a lot of very heavy topics. I want to thank TDSB staff in the room, Leanne for her incredible administrative support, and Nandy, Debbie. Louise is not feeling well, and we hope she's feeling better. All of the centrally assigned principals here and online. The staff who've helped support us through the meeting with the IT, and just everybody. I want to thank all of you. This is everybody's evening. And whether it's your staff position, you'd rather be home with your family or volunteers, we're all here because we care. I want to thank you for your time. We've covered a lot of tough ground. Have a really good summer and roll up your sleeves because September will come. We got a lot to cover. Thank you very much. And subject to any objections, I'm going to adjourn the meeting.